It would be much better for public discourse if we were to consider conspiracy theories on their merits, because I suspect, like me, you want to live in a world which you think is free of conspiracies. So, I am willing to embrace conspiracy theories. The question is, are you?
I welcome this kind of examination.
You are free to do as we tell you. You are free to do as we tell you.
His head could be seen to move violently forward.
Back and to the left. Back and to the left.
That's why I don't read the newspaper. I'm a man. I'm 40.
What did the president know, and when did he know it?
I began by telling the president that there was a cancer growing on the presidency.
As of now, I am in control here in the White House.
This is crack cocaine from the White House. It could easily have been heroin or PCP. It's as innocent looking as candy.
Good evening, this is Mae Bressel in Carmel, California.
Anybody who's not willing to change based on what they learned is ignorant.
Coffee's for closers only.
I think we've given you enough.
On to Chicago and let's win there.
Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
This is the Midnight Rider News Show with S.T Patrick.
Hi, this is Lieutenant Colonel Jim Wilbanks. You're listening to the Midnight Rider News Show with S.T Patrick.
Hello, America and the world. Welcome to the Midnight Rider News Show. I'm S.T Patrick, your friendly neighborhood host, traipsing and traversing through the trials and travails that have so tempestuously and untruthfully been blasted into your eyes, ears, and minds by the state-sponsored talking heads, the court historians, and the textbook conglomerates that control information today. Tonight, we have episode 131, Douglas Cirignano and American Conspiracies and Cover-Ups. Our guest tonight is interviewer Douglas Cirignano, who has produced a set of interviews in a book form, and he calls that book, American Conspiracies and Cover-Ups. Now, it's available from Skyhorse Publishing, and you can get it on Amazon as well. So after the interview, we'll also hear a fascinating TEDx talk from Matthew Dentith on conspiracies. I think you'll like that one, so stay tuned for that. To tidy up a little bit this evening, I'd like to remind folks that we do have a Patreon page. If you'd like to help the Midnight Rider News Show, and we hope you will, if you'd like to help us pay a few bills and be a part of this team, you can go to the Patreon page, which you can find a button for on MidnightRiderNews.com. Now, if you'd like to help Garrison, the Journal of History and Deep Politics, stay afloat, you can go to GoFundMe.com/GarrisonTheJournal. And if you didn't get that here, there's also a button and instructions for that on MidnightRiderNews.com as well. So for those who have helped, I want to say thank you so much. I'm incredibly thankful to all of you. We'll be right back with Douglas Cirignano.
This is Peter Janney, author of Mary's Mosaic, the CIA conspiracy to murder John F. Kennedy, Mary Pinchot Meyer, and their vision for world peace. For more on the murders of a president and a well-connected Washington, D.C. socialite and an ideal shared by both, listen to episode 81 of the Midnight Rider News Show.
Our guest tonight, Douglas Cirignano, is the author of American Conspiracies and Cover-Ups, JFK, 9/11, the Fed, rigged elections, suppressed cancer cures, and the greatest conspiracies of our time. Now, it's a book of interviews from Skyhorse Publishing, and we have interviews here with Robert Stinnett, Barr McClellan, Dr. William Pepper, Joe Banister, G. Edward Griffin, Dr. Alan Cantwell, Dr. Ralph Moss, Bev Harris, Charles Key, Noam Chomsky, Jim Marrs, and David Ray Griffin, the great David Ray Griffin. So we're going to talk a little bit with Douglas about that tonight. Hello, Douglas. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on your show. I've seen your website. It looks like a great website. So thanks for having me here.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Now, you have a book that is a collection of 12 interviews. Why did you decide to do a collection of interviews rather than just a regular nonfiction book?
Well, I always found interviews are fun to read. You know, I think maybe I'm a lazy reader, so they read faster. But I think they're fun to read and they read fast. And yeah, I did 12 interviews. I lucked out. I got some of the most famous conspiracy theory authors in the world. I got Jim Marrs on the New World Order. I got G. Edward Griffin on the Federal Reserve. I got Professor Noam Chomsky on the mainstream media. He's not really a conspiracy theorist, but
no, he definitely is not.
Yeah, some people think the media is a conspiracy. I got one of Lyndon Johnson's lawyers, Barr McClellan, on Kennedy assassination. A friend of Martin Luther King, William Pepper on the King assassination. So I really got like really well-known guys. I lucked out in that way, and I think that's what makes my book interesting.
Well, why don't we start out first with your thoughts on conspiracy? Now, you say in your introduction that the word conspiracy is a pejorative, and to a great degree, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But why do you think that is?
Well, I think it is. I think there's clear evidence it is because there was a book written by this guy, DeHaven Smith, called Conspiracy Theory in America. Right after the Kennedy assassination, the CIA had a specific plan to influence their media outlets, and the CIA had a lot of connections to media outlets, telling them that the term conspiracy theory should have a negative connotation. Anybody supposed to who doesn't believe the Warren Commission, doesn't believe the government version, is a kook, is irrational, and shouldn't be listened to. And DeHaven Smith says that this agenda, the program CIA, was very effective because even today, the term conspiracy theory is pejorative. It has a negative connotation. And he says it's because of that program of the CIA. So it could be.
Yes, absolutely. You know, Lance DeHaven Smith is a really interesting guy. He's an academic. He taught at Florida State. And I really like the fact that you brought him up because he's really not doing well right now in his personal health. And that's all I really care to share about that. But he was going to write for Garrison, the journal that we have. But his current situation may actually not allow him to do so, which is actually very sad both for him and for the journal. But he seems like a really sharp guy. And that book that you mentioned, Conspiracy Theory in America, man, it's a must read for anyone even mildly interested in this field. Yeah. And if I were to teach a course on this, on all of this, that would absolutely be one of the main textbooks that we use. Yeah. It is a brilliant, brilliant work. But back to this idea of conspiracy. Now, I just don't think that the mainstream media is really willing to step off of what are their own narratives. And they have a certain way that they work, and I think that's part of the cause of that. They have certain sources and spokespersons that they really invest in and believe in. And because they've sort of formed these relationships, they're really going to put all the weight in those relationships, and they want that to be the truth. So they sort of just stick with it.
I think because the mainstream media is very powerful, I think the bad guys, quote unquote, have control of the mainstream media. I think the mainstream media is like 6 corporations, and it's the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a secretive think tank, has a lot of influence over that, and even the CIA. So because the CIA, perhaps, or Council on Foreign Relations, they have so much influence over the media. If this, mainstream idea is coming at us from a million directions, it's going to be hard for us to accept something different.
Right. But you know what I've noticed recently, Douglas? I've noticed that more and more, people don't just react with a disbelief that what they've known forever or what the media has told them forever isn't necessarily true. They act with a certain bit of hostility. That you're in some way calling them ignorant because they've believed the mainstream media, which is not the case at all.
Yeah. I think maybe they feel like they're a dunce, or they've been they're stupid for believing, and they get offended if you tell them otherwise. Or maybe it sounds so crazy that they think you're crazy, and they're offended that somebody's telling something crazy. But it isn't crazy. The conspiracy theories could very well be true. Like Pearl Harbor, it's very well could be that Franklin Roosevelt let Pearl Harbor happen to give us an excuse to get into World War II. And people who are very patriotic love America. They love what happened in World War II. They won't accept that. They get angry.
Yes, absolutely. Now, you talked to Robert Stinnett, who has done, decades of great work on Pearl Harbor and FDR's foreknowledge. I know Doug Horn pretty well. I think he has written the definitive 2-volume series on that. If anyone wants to read more, I would absolutely go to those books. I would recommend them highly. Now, so you did do 12 interviews, but who was it that you tried to get but couldn't? Who did you really want to interview but just didn't have the chance to do so?
Well, I've belonged to this organization ever since 1980 called Awareness Communications, and it's like an underground newspaper. They believe very rich men join secretive clubs, and they want to get behind the scenes and control politics. That's the conspiracy theory. And then there's probably about 12 basic conspiracy theories that people who believe in conspiracy theories believe. Because since the advent of the internet, this has become more and more popular, Alex Jones and whatnot. And so I think I basically went for the 12 biggest, best known conspiracy theorists. I think that's what I basically did. I remember I tried to interview one guy who was a general and talk to him about the Oklahoma City bombing, and I wasn't able to get him, but that worked out good because I was able to get Charles Key, who was the Republican whip in the Oklahoma State Legislature at the time of the Oklahoma City bombing, and so that worked out. Yeah, I actually got everybody I wanted. I really lucked out. I really got some good interviewees here, and I don't think I missed anybody I wanted to get.
Were you surprised by anything that any of your interviewees had to say?
I don't know that I'm that surprised by any of them, really. I think maybe David Ray Griffin. He's like the leading authority on the idea of 9/11 was a inside job. There's so much information there that's surprising, and it's like so many people heard bombs going off right there at the World Trade Center. Why isn't that reported by the media? There was a guy who got hit by bombs before the planes crashed into the buildings in the basement of the World Trade Center. The people saw bombs going off, but that's not reported by the media. So a lot of the information connected to 9/11 probably surprises me.
Douglas, I know you already went into these interviews with the mindset that you were more prone to believe the conspiracy than you were to believe the mainstream media's narrative on all of these events. But was there one interview that you conducted where you came out of it thinking, wow, this conspiracy is much larger and it's much more of a grand scope than I ever thought it was?
Well, maybe the guy I interviewed who said, there's a big controversy now whether or not vaccines are good for you or not. So I think some vaccines are good for you, but I think that some are dangerous, and we should be aware which one was taking. So this guy I interviewed, Dr. Alan Cantwell, actually said a bad vaccine was the cause of the AIDS epidemic. There's a vaccine given out by the CDC and the World Health Organization. You could check that out. It could be true. But I think some vaccines are good for you, but I think some are bad. I think we have to be careful.
Absolutely. That interview with Alan Cantwell is very good, but so is the one with Dr. Ralph Moss, and I'm going to let you answer the question that you ask as the title of that chapter.
Yeah.
Is the cancer establishment ignoring and suppressing effective, natural, and inexpensive treatments and cures for cancer?
Well, it seems like it could be, because there's been so many times when some doctor had some good positive treatment, he's using it on his patients, he's helping his patients, some of them are getting cured, and the FDA comes in on him and shuts him down, and he can no longer use the treatment. It's probably happened 24 times, maybe more. So that makes you think that, the bad guys who are running the world, they don't want anything else but chemotherapy to be the treatment because they're making so much money selling chemotherapy. It could be. I think there's a possibility. Like one guy who felt that there was a better treatment for cancer was Dr. Linus Pauling, who won the Nobel Prize for chemistry in the 1950s or 60s. He also won the Nobel Peace Prize. He believed that if you take mega doses of vitamin C, that it could help or maybe even cure you of cancer. But he could get no cooperation from the medical establishment, from the FDA. They wouldn't work with him. They actually tested it, and they intentionally messed up the test. And so Dr. Linus Pauling, the guy who won the Nobel Prize for chemistry, finally said everyone should know that the war on cancer is largely a fraud.
Well, this actually reminds me of a friend I had once. He was a medical doctor, and I used to ask him very basic, but what I think were very interesting questions about certain things, about how the body works and about the industry as well. And I asked him once about this thing called fibromyalgia. I had noticed that more and more people were being diagnosed with this, especially more and more women.
Yeah.
And they never could quite explain to me what it was. And so I said, man, you've got to tell me, what is fibromyalgia? And he sort of paused and he sort of chuckled and he said, well, I'm going to be honest with you. Here it is. When people come into the doctor's office, they usually want two things. They want a diagnosis and they want a prescription.
Yeah.
They want you to tell them what's wrong, and they want you to write a prescription for pills.
Yeah.
That's really what they want. That's what they want in America, at least. And he said, so many people were coming in with just phantom pain. And it could be pain because they don't eat right. It could be pain because they don't exercise. But to tell them those two things, and we tell them that all the time, to tell them those two things, you're just spitting in the wind, in essence. He said, you're telling them things that they don't want to hear, and you're telling them things that they are not going to change. So we still say that. But fibromyalgia was sort of made up by the medical community just so we could have a diagnosis for people that come in terrible shape and say, I'm hurting because of it. Well, they want it to be called something, so we made up fibromyalgia, and then we can describe pain medication of some kind. That's all it is. It's not a real disease. And I sort of laughed because I totally understood what he was saying, but I couldn't believe it. Not only is it phantom pain, but it's a phantom disease.
Oh, yeah, that's how it is, right? You mean they don't even know what it is, but they're making a medicine for it and giving it to you saying good luck? I think they do the same thing with psychiatric, like the attention deficit disorder. That's a kid's just bored. Bored.
Douglas, believe me, as a former teacher of 10 years, I could do a whole episode on ADD and the parents who want their child to be diagnosed with ADD for a multitude of reasons. But this is not the time nor the place. But let's go into Noam Chomsky. What really got you interested in him?
Well, he wrote a famous book called Manufacturing Consent about how the corporate media, the corporations have so much influence over the media that they taint and influence the media to just report things that will favor the big business interests. But you're right, he's not a conspiracy theorist. Some people think that the Council on Foreign Relations makes sure that their people are running the mainstream media, and it is a conspiracy. Back in the 1920s, like J.P. Morgan, they said he rounded up, he brought up like 25 newspapers and placed an editor at each to try to control the media. So maybe the media is a conspiracy. Maybe the CIA is conspiring to control. But Chomsky does not believe that. He doesn't believe it. He believes it's just the way things are done. It's tainted to favor the big business interests. But you're right. I did an interesting interview with him. I don't know if he's right or John Hyland, the mayor of New York City. He once said in 1926, these international bankers and Rockefeller Standard Oil interests control the majority of newspapers and magazines in this country. Now, is John Hyland right or is Chomsky right? Maybe you can read my article and you can decide. But you're right, he's not a conspiracy theorist.
Well, I think that's the case, especially since we used to have a plethora of mainstream media ownership almost in each city in America. And now we have this sort of massive contraction since the 1990s of media companies, media conglomerates. And now there are very few people running what is a very powerful medium.
I know. That's the very, how can you have a free and open exchange when it's so consolidated? But that's why the internet is good, I think, because the internet is a free and open exchange, and shows like yours, you're going to talk whatever you want. You don't have some corporate leader telling you what to say. And Breitbart and Matt Drudge and Infowars.com, hopefully all the, I don't know, I think the mainstream media, maybe it'll die like Donald Trump says. I don't know. And I think that might be a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's very wishful thinking, and while I may wish that too, I think the chances of that happening are zero, as it's the major propaganda arm of the New World Order or of the shadow government or the secret state or the deep state, whatever you choose to call it. I just don't think that's ever going to be the case. Now, you interviewed someone who's since passed away, and someone very popular in the JFK community, the UFO community, the 9/11 community, and that's Jim Marrs.
Oh, yeah.
What did you think about Jim Marrs?
Well, I specifically interviewed him about the New World Order, the idea that there's this agenda, that's a conspiracy theory, that the powerful elites are going to get us all into a one-world Big Brother government. That's what I interviewed him about. And the proof of that really is the Agenda 21 program in the United Nations. The Agenda 21 program is a specific program of the United Nations, and they say eventually we're all going to have to go live in Agenda 21 living facilities, otherwise global warming is going to kill us. And I asked Jim, he thinks global warming isn't a problem for another 100,000 years. But that is the proof that there is an agenda to have Big Brother, you know. I think Jim Marzi is one of the most clearest writers that there were, you know. He talked about the deepest truths of politics and history, and, you know, I think we still have him in his books, thank God, you know. What do you think about global warming?
Whew. What do I think about global warming? You know, I'm not really sure I've ever had a guest ask my opinion on anything on this show, which actually I'm okay with. You know, this is a show for the guests after all. But as with most things, I don't really have a hard position on either side, Douglas. I'll be honest with you. I mean, do I think there are changes taking place environmentally? Yes. Do I think that we'll have to adapt to those changes? Yes. Should we all voluntarily make some lifestyle adjustments? Absolutely. But should the government tell someone in rural Montana, for example, someone say 70 miles from their nearest grocery store, that he or she can only drive a certain amount of miles in a week? I mean, no, I think that's ludicrous. I mean, it's easier to say that to someone in a Manhattan or a Beverly Hills than in, say, rural Montana or Nevada. You know, I was in a city once. I was in Rachel, Nevada. I was in Alamo, Nevada, and they're a good hour and a half to 2 hours for Alamo and about 3 to 3.5 for Rachel. And Alamo has one sort of gas station / grocery store, and Rachel doesn't really have anything other than one sort of inn that serves as a diner.
Yes.
And to get to a real city, you really do have to go 2 to 3 hours to Las Vegas. I mean, should they be told that they can only drive so many miles in a week as compared to someone in downtown Chicago or downtown Miami? I mean, I think that's ridiculous. And it's much easier for those people in the population centers to seem more open-minded and smarter for supporting such things when they obviously have zero understanding of anything that happens in states that don't touch an ocean. So when I hear about things like how species are disappearing, I always wonder if maybe environmental changes will also add new species over centuries and centuries of time. And I also wonder if you know, we always talk about what will be lost, but we never really discuss what could be gained over a long period of time. So I always look at the veracity of past predictions. And in the 60s, we were all told that we're going to have gas masks in 20 years to survive. Well, obviously not true. And then in the 70s, you know, Time magazine had a front page where their expert climatologists told us that we were in an ice age. How has that gone south? And then of late, the popularization of this phrase global warming was strategically changed, and we have the documents to show that, to the very generic climate change, and so generic that you can't really specify it. So when anything happens, it could be climate change. Well, so when the global warming numbers were not exactly what they want them to be, we're going to change it to climate change rather than global warming. I mean, why is that? That seems way too strategic for me. And you know, as I said, climate change is so generic. I mean, it can mean anything and everything. It's a very large tent. And so I think let us not be fooled, you know, if large foundations are pushing climate change, if large foundations are pushing global warming, then there's huge profit to be gained from it somewhere. And it's a new profit that we will control? No, it's a new profit that they will control. So that worries me as well when I think about things like when Al Gore was talking about carbon credits. Okay, Al, but who profits? I mean, anytime you have profits of billions of dollars, you have propaganda of billions of dollars. So what is that propaganda? Where is that propaganda? And who's speaking that propaganda? Obviously, people representing the billionaires who will make billions off of carbon credits, people who will make billions off of global warming or climate change. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, I believe, I guess, that every person should do what they can do. I think that you should conserve. I think you should save. I think you shouldn't litter. I think you should support clean air and clean water. I mean, who shouldn't? I think you should do everything that you can in your small communities. Who shouldn't? But to support the restriction of companies that continue to pollute your cities, I think that's a good thing. But when you have someone like Bill Gates Bill Gates telling you that if you don't do X, Y, and Z, that you're all going to die in 30 years. I mean, I would be very leery of where that's going. So I guess that's what I think. So on to another question. Let's go to Alex Jones. Now, you mentioned Alex Jones and InfoWars earlier, and I've said this multiple times on the show. I thought he was doing great work around 2002, 2003, when he was really going into Bohemian Grove and the militarization of police and 9/11. But when he really caved on Pizzagate, and then he, I think, did a 180 on just national politics in 2016, I was very disappointed, actually. What do you think of Alex Jones now as compared to, say, 2003, 2002?
Well, I think it sort of is the same Alex Jones. I think maybe he's made some mistakes. You know, he's not perfect. He said Sandy Hook didn't happen. I think he said that first, but then he retracted that, said it did happen. If Pizzagate, he said it happened, then he retracted on that. You know, maybe he's made some mistakes, but I think he's basically the same guy. And I think he's a populist. You know, he wants the right thing for the people. And I think, you know, maybe he makes some mistakes, but I sort of think he's the same guy.
I really don't think so, and so we'll have to agree to disagree on that. But I think trying to figure out why that is a whole other can of worms. But as a person who is more apt to read conspiracy books, who are you reading right now?
I'm not reading that much because whenever I'm working, I don't read a lot. But I've read Jim Mars and G. Edward Griffin. And I like to get a lot of information from great websites, you know, like InfoWars and Breitbart and Midnight Writers News, and you know, so much information you can look up on the internet, you know. So,
well, Douglas, we all have our own secret origin, as they say at DC Comics. Where did your road to conspiracy begin?
It started a while ago. I think it started for a lot of people with the advent of the internet, but with me, it was like 1979. There was an organization called Awareness Communications. It was a newsletter about how there's a conspiracy to have a new world order. The Federal Reserve is privately owned. The Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission is running everything. I got that newsletter, and since then, that's what I always believed. And then it got confirmed in so many ways once the internet came out, because there's so many people on the internet talking about that stuff. So it happened for me a while ago, like 1979, when I got that newsletter. I still think that newsletter is accurate. It's actually called Cosmic Awareness Communications, if you want to check it out.
Is there going to be a volume 2 to American Conspiracies and Cover-Ups? Will you do more interviews?
Well, I might, but as it is now with my publisher, they expect me to do all the publicizing and advertising. So I'm busy publicizing and advertising, doing interviews, working a Twitter page, working a Facebook page. If I do that after 9 months, yeah, I could probably write a American Conspiracies and Cover-Ups Volume 2, you know, more of the same type of interviews, yeah.
Well, I think it's always good to shine a spotlight on these stories. I think it's always good to publicize the people that you interviewed. A lot of them have done just incredible work over the years. So I think it's good to get this information out there, yes. Yeah. Well, maybe Trump will help with that, because I think Trump understands many of the conspiracy theories. So maybe Trump will, you know, he's always talking out against the Federal Reserve. I don't know if he'll ever end the Fed. That's an important thing, to have no central bank. When he first came in, he said, let's make sure vaccines are safe. Let's make sure elections aren't rigged. But he didn't get anywhere there with that, because he's surrounded by a corrupt Congress and a corrupt mainstream media. But maybe there's some hope. Well, I think he's also surrounded himself with the neoconservative cabinet, which has not helped any of those things occur. So, you know, there's that.
Oh, I know he chose people from Wall Street. Are they neocons too?
Yes, absolutely. It's the Fritz Kramer line of American politics.
Oh, I don't know. I get the impression that Trump is a populist. He's, in a way, a product of Alex Jones. I think Alex Jones and all their followers truly want to make America better. So I felt like he's a good guy. Now, if he's hiring neocons, that's not so good. I know he's hiring a lot of Wall Street guys, but maybe he's not listening to them or something, hopefully.
So for everyone out there who may be interested at this point, How can they buy the book?
Okay, well, my book is called American Conspiracies and Cover-Ups, and you can go to my website, AmericanConspiraciesandCoverups.com. There's a slash between cover and ups, and you spell out and, A-N-D, AmericanConspiraciesandCoverups.com. And it's interviews with some of the most important, well-known conspiracy theory authors in the world. Jim Marrs, G. Edward Griffin, Lyndon Johnson's lawyer, friend of Martin Luther King, Joe Banister, famous IRS agent who believes we shouldn't have an income tax. So it's like the best-known conspiracy theory authors, and it's interviews, so it's fun to read. And it's about a cornucopia of conspiracy theories. I got a recommendation from Jim Marrs. I don't have the whole thing here, but basically Mr. Marrs said, let me see, he said, those intrepid souls seeking to peer deeper into American greatest conspiracy, you should start with Douglas Cirignano's book. Then he said, don't miss this tour de force. So it's on Amazon, and it's on my website, AmericanConspiraciesandCoverups.com.
And this has been Douglas Cirignano, the author of American Conspiracies and Cover-Ups, JFK, 9/11, the Fed, Rigged Elections, Suppressed Cancer Cures, and the Greatest Conspiracies of Our Time. It's a collection of 12 interviews, very good interviews, I must say, and it's a book worth getting. So thank you very much, Douglas. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much. It was great talking to you.
Now I'd like to play for you a TEDx talk. It's called Just Because It's a Conspiracy Doesn't Mean It Isn't True. It's by Matthew Dentith, and I believe it was recorded in 2014. It's not overly long, but I think you'll like it. I think it's good. So here it is.
Hello, Christchurch. I am here to ask a very simple question. What do you think about conspiracy theories? Some of you will be thinking about claims that the CIA have been harboring alien life on Earth for decades. Others of you might be thinking of that secretive but strangely well-known organization known as the New World Order, always up to no good, always being talked about in the media. And some of you will think of the claim that 9/11 was an inside job, not orchestrated by Al-Qaeda, but rather by George W. Bush and his cronies. Conspiracy theories are weird, right? Except most of us are inclined to discuss conspiracy theories. It's just that we do something like, we say, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but, which often means we're a conspiracy theorist in denial. And of course, this makes a kind of sense, because when you think about it, when we say, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, we're often defending our conspiracy theory by simply saying, look, I'm just positing that maybe a conspiracy explains this particular event. And that actually does make a kind of sense, because we know that conspiracies occur, especially given those pesky WikiLeaks and NSA revelations. Our worry about conspiracy theories is that we don't know where belief in them is going to lead. Do we go down the rabbit hole once we start believing in conspiracy theories? I mean, we all know of wacky conspiracy theorists. There's this guy, David Icke. He believes in alien shape-shifting reptiles who control the world, drink our blood, and are emotional vampires of some kind. And his views have salience in our own little political sphere. This is the Prime Minister basically denying being an alien shape-shifting reptile due to a OYA request. He claims he doesn't own a green suit. He's never been in a flying saucer, and he got a vet to check that he wasn't actually a reptile. So it's important to note, John Kerr is not a reptile. Then, of course, there's Alex Jones. Alex Jones has a much more prosaic thesis about the world. He doesn't believe in alien shape-shifting reptiles. He believes we're controlled by the New World Order. And, of course, within our own local context, there's Ian Wishart. He believes that anthropogenic climate change is a scam, that scientists are suppressing the truth of intelligent design, and that Helen Clark, a former Prime Minister of this country, was not under the control of alien shape-shifting reptiles, but rather lesbians. Now, obviously, conspiracy theorists are weird, and therefore conspiracy theories are weird too, right? Indeed, it seems that all conspiracy theorists ever do is engage in what we might call negative argumentation. And by negative argumentation, I mean they tell you everything you believe is wrong, and therefore all their conspiracy theories are in some way correct. And if that's the case, we don't want to count ourselves amongst those conspiracy theorists. Thus, we can happily get on with ignoring claims that say the NSA spies on everyone, that Cameron Slater ran black ops for elements of the National Party, and that the UK and the USA went to war in Iraq on a pretense. Conspiracies occur. Even the staunchest defender of the status quo is willing to admit that conspiracies do occur. It's that niggling worry we have. If I start believing one conspiracy theory, aren't I going to start believing all conspiracy theories? What's stopping us from buying that tinfoil hat? Well, the answer is philosophy. Specifically, thinking critically about conspiracy theories. I'm here to tell you that you can be a conspiracy theorist without becoming a David Icke or an Ian Wishart. And just look at my credentials. I wrote my PhD on belief in conspiracy theories, and there's my book, The Philosophy of Conspiracy Theories. If there's anyone you're going to listen to when it comes to the claim that conspiracy theories have a bad and unjustified reputation, then it's going to be me. Sometimes it's rational to believe conspiracy theories. Think of it this way. We all know people who vote for, say, our preferred political party, who couldn't give a good argument as to why to save their life. In almost any topic, in any field, there are people who believe things for what turn out to be bad reasons. And yet we don't typically dismiss the entire field of atheism just because Richard Dawkins said yet another stupid or bigoted thing. Or at least we shouldn't. In the same respect, the fact that there are weird conspiracy theorists out there doesn't actually tell us that belief in conspiracy theories is actually weird. All it tells us is that sometimes people believe things for bad reasons. Now, some of you will be going, hold on. Surely the reason why we're so skeptical about conspiracy theories is that most of them are not supported by the evidence. Now, I'm not going to disagree with that kind of sentiment. Everything we believe should be backed up by the evidence. And yes, there are plenty of conspiracy theories which fail to be good precisely because there is a lack of evidence that supports them. At the same time, there are lots of seemingly wacky conspiracy theories which, when investigated, turned out to be true. Indeed, all it takes is a cursory glance at history to find examples of seemingly implausible and massive conspiracy theories, which turned out to be vindicated by the historical record. Take, for example, 1930s Russia. When it comes to plots and capers about Bond-style villains, Russia in the 1930s reads more like fiction than a Dan Brown novel. The lead character in this particular melodrama was Joseph Stalin, leader of the USSR, and one of, if not the greatest mass murderers of all time. In the 1930s, Stalin was obsessed that his former friend and now enemy in exile, Leon Trotsky, was conspiring to take over the USSR. Stalin asked the security police to investigate, and when they found no evidence of a conspiracy by Trotsky to take over the USSR, they manufactured the evidence. They arrested people, they physically and psychologically tortured them, put them on trial, found them guilty, and then executed them, all to prove the existence of a conspiracy that did not exist. Now, at the time, people who saw the available evidence said, look, these trial verdicts look like they're a bit of a sham. But to cover up their conspiracy, Stalin and his cronies called their detractors conspiracy theorists. And faced with dueling conspiracy theories, the governments of the UK and the US sided with Stalin and dismissed his detractors. And this turned out to be a mistake, because when Stalin died, his successor Nikita Khrushchev, one of the conspirators, actually admitted to the deception. Conspiracy theorists use examples like these, which are more common than most of us are actually willing to admit. Say, look, there could be conspiracies going on right here, right now. And given what we know from the NSA revelations and from WikiLeaks, we should not dismiss these concerns lightly. Also, it turns out that sometimes all you've got when it comes to explanations are rival conspiracy theories. Take, for example, the death of this man, Alexander Litvinenko. Some of you might remember the story. Back in November 2006, Alexander Litvinenko, a vocal detractor of Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin's regime, died after he was poisoned with polonium-210. Polonium-210 is an aggressive and vile poison, and it takes a very long time to die. It took Litvinenko 3 weeks to succumb to his poison, and in that time, he blamed elements within the Russian establishment, as well as Putin himself, as being in on a conspiracy to kill him. Now, killing someone with polonium is an unusual form of assassination, given the sheer cost and effort it takes to obtain and refine the radionucleotide. And so it seems that it just doesn't seem likely that he was killed via mundane reasons, but rather a conspiracy. I.e., why didn't the assassins, if they just hated Litvinenko, pop down the chemists and buy a simpler, cheaper toxin like cyanide? So the question is, which particular naked Putin pictures, very easy to find on the internet. Why didn't the assassins pop down and buy a cheaper toxin? It just seems likely that actually his death is a result of a conspiracy. But which conspiracy theory about his death should we believe? Was Litvinenko killed at the behest of the Russian state as a warning sign to other vocal detractors that Putin can get you at any time? Or was Litvinenko a patsy for the Russian dissidence movement, a calculated death designed to foster tensions between the West and Russia? No matter the case, it seems that the only way to explain Litvinenko's demise is by reference to some theory about a conspiracy. We might not know which particular conspiracy theory is true, although people do have their suspicions, but a conspiracy theory is the only viable explanation for the death of Alexander Litvinenko. And then, of course, there's 9/11. No matter what you believe about what happened on September the 11th, 2001, in New York and Washington, D.C., you turn out to be a conspiracy theorist. So, for example, if you believe that 9/11 was an inside job committed by George W. Bush and his cronies, then that's a conspiracy theory. In the same respect, if you believe that 9/11 was committed by Al-Qaeda as retribution for American foreign policy, then that's a conspiracy theory as well. After all, the Al-Qaeda hypothesis posits a set of plotters who operated in secret towards some end. That is a classic definition of a conspiracy. In this case, a conspiracy to commit a terrorist act. The big thing about 9/11 is the question, which conspiracy theory is warranted by the evidence? And that's the big issue, isn't it? Because sometimes conspiracy theorists put forward arguments and evidence in support of their claims of conspiracy. And in that kind of situation, we are obliged to follow the arguments and evidence wherever they go. So if someone puts forward an argument in support of a conspiracy theory, we are obliged to analyze that argument rather than simply dismiss it out of hand. If we dismiss conspiracy theories just because wacky people like David Icke or Ian Wishart believe them, then arguably it becomes easier for conspirators to get away with their conspiracies. After all, if all conspiracy theories are bad examples, then of course anything that gets labeled a conspiracy theory, we can just push to one side. It would be much better for public discourse if we were to consider conspiracy theories on their merits, because I suspect, like me, you want to live in a world which you think is free of conspiracies. So, I am willing to embrace conspiracy theories. The question is, are you? Thank you.
That was Matthew Dentith, and some of those TEDx talks are pretty good and others are pretty weak, but I really like that one. Now, I was confronted by a lot this week. I faced a lot of anger, not directly, mind you, but just in passing. Both sides of this Trump argument and indirectly all political arguments right now are so angry. And I have good friends on both sides of the contrived political spectrum, and they're all angry. Some of them are just the sweetest human beings I've ever known. But now even they are saying things that I never thought would have come out of their mouths. I'm seeing good people posting Facebook pictures of Trump with his head cut off, for God's sake. I'm seeing good people saying the most inhumane things about those on the left who do truly care about this world. You just can't avoid it now. It's such a big part of America 2019 that you just can't avoid it. Yet, I do try. I try as much as I can, and I try not to host an angry show. I don't produce an angry magazine. And I think we're better for that, But do you really understand that the angry are doing the bidding of the hierarchy here? Do you really understand that? They can sit on their horses atop the hills and watch the plebeians all battle it out as they laugh. This ties into another destructive behavior that Donald Jeffries and I discuss often. And I still cannot, for the life of me, understand why I'm hearing more and more minimum wage workers, struggling workers, argue against raising the minimum wage or for the right of the CEO to make as much as they can get. I mean, look. Even if you end up being wrong, you are the only advocate that you will ever have. I can't understand giving up the only power that you ever have, which is your voice. Imagine the CEO laughing as he or she sits in their office and sort of sees this out there. I mean, they must be saying, wait, you mean that my cashier's making $8 an hour, who can barely afford to buy gas to get to work, are arguing against me paying them more? Perfect. Now I don't have to do the arguing. That's what we're playing into, If the billionaire president wants to battle the billionaire media, let him. If the billionaire media wants to battle the billionaire president, let them. Why are you doing the fighting for them? Do you really have a stake in this? I mean, sure. Of course, they'll tell you that you do. Of course. They'll tell you that once again in 2020, this is the most consequential election of your lifetime. It's life or death. The right will tell you that if you don't re-elect Trump, the commies will be marching home again. Hurrah, hurrah. And the left will tell you that re-electing Trump brings the concentration camps and death of the environment forever. But come on. You are the great equalizer. Your behavior fights evil, and it fights the things we never wanted to be. You're the stabilization that will pull back the morally crippled politicians on both sides of the political aisle. But if you're becoming crippled yourself, then how can you do any good? For whom are you really angry? Who does it really benefit in the end? From the other side of the mountain, on the best side of midnight, I do wish you peace.